Thank you so much for being here. My name is Horizon Anthony, for those of you that don't know me. Keep this short and sweet. For those of you unfamiliar with this event, it's modeled after Moth storytelling events, which, started in a little apartment building at a, dinner party in New York and wound up being at various colleges. And, this is our attempt to do that here. So, we just have some people telling stories without notes, just from the heart, from their own lives. I think this kind of event is particularly important, especially now. We have so much separation from each other. The election coming up kind of highlights that. And it's so easy to other, people, to just not see their humanity, just brush them off. But it's really hard to do that when you see complexity. When you have a moment where, you hear a story, this person becomes something other than, a caricature, this is kind of what this event is to me, just a moment to see other people's humanity, and just connect. So, I just want to thank Lewis Robinson, and Annabelle and Kylie and Zach. Without them, this event wouldn't be happening. I want to thank everyone in the audience who's giving our speakers, the time and space to share themselves with us. And I just want to thank our readers because, without them, we would not be here. It's very, it's hard to be up here. It's a lot of anxiety and it's a lot of, it is a lot of terror, just taking a part of you and showing it to the world, And every creative in here knows that, but it's a big thing. So let's just give a hand for everybody involved. And then our first speaker is going to be Noelle Dubé. Noelle is a teacher, college counselor, and UMF alum, originally from Fort Kent, Maine.
Hi, everyone. Horizon, what you said was so beautiful, but tonight I have a confession to make, and I'm open to being a little shamed about it. That's why I'm up here. So this story begins in 2010. I'm on the UMF campus. I'm in my dorm. I'm a sophomore. I'm trying to get a work-study job, which I don't have yet. And I live with someone in Lockwood Hall who has a job at Swat Winter Child Care Center, working with the children in the facility. And she's like, well, we have a space available in the kitchen if you would like it. I hate cooking. I'm really scared of cooking. I find it really stressful. But I was assured that the job was just going to be, pouring one food item into a bowl, pouring another food item into a bowl, setting them on a table, picking up the dishes, washing them. That was it. That was the job. So I was like, okay, I can do this. All right. So we start the job. We show up at 7 a.m. every day, a little before 7. And I go into the kitchen. There's a menu available for me, so I don't even have to decide what to make. The menu will just say Cheerios and canned peaches. That's it. So I'll pour the things into the bowls. I'll set the bowls up. The kids eat. That's it. And then they have their morning activity, and then Sarah and I go home for the rest of the day. So sometimes, occasionally, there's a slightly more complicated meal. One time I walked in and it was muffins. But on those days, the lunch person would set up all of the muffin ingredients. They would make the batter and put it in the fridge. And I would just show up. I only had 15 minutes to cook. So I would show up, make the muffins, and that was it. So on this particular day, I show up, and on the menu it says pancakes. And if you can believe, it's the first time I've ever thought about making pancakes. I've eaten a pancake, I understand what a pancake is, but now I have to make one. And that's just something that maybe they thought I would know how to do, but I don't. But thankfully, so I open the fridge, and the pancake mix has already been prepared for me, so thank you. All I have to do is find a griddle, which I do. So I set the griddle up like a tabletop griddle, and I turn it on, and the first batch just comes out terrible. They're like completely burnt. There's something so wrong with them. So I put some blueberries into the mix. It's like, okay, great. These will be even better. The next batch is a little bit better. It's like somehow very translucent that I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And the blueberries have made them look sort of also black. So it's like translucent discs with black circles in them. So I go into the kindergarten classroom and I'm like, is there just like syrup or something I can slather on these? And they're like, no, we don't want the kids eating sugar, that much sugar this early in the morning, just serve them as is. They'll eat them, it'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. I serve the pancakes, I put them on the table. I go back into the kitchen. The teacher comes in, and she's like, actually, never mind, do you have any syrup? These are terrible pancakes. Like, okay. So I found some syrup, and I put it on the table. And I go back into the kitchen, and I'm like, great, I did it. Another successful day at Sweatwinter Child Care Center. So then Emily comes in, I pick up the dishes. I put them in the sink to wash them. Emily, the teacher, Emily, are you here? Okay. Emily, the teacher, comes back into the kitchen, opens the refrigerator door, and says, where's the paper mache? I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's morning meeting, we're doing paper mache today. And I was like, there wasn't any in there. I don't know what you're talking about. I know what I have done wrong, but I don't want Emily to know. So I'm like, let's go check the other fridges. And then we go in the other classroom and check the fridge. And I'm like, I don't know, there was no. I'm like standing in front of the stack of dishes hiding the bowl. Like there was no bowl in there. I don't know what you're talking about. And so then Emily's like, oh, fine, I will come up with something else to do for morning activity. And she disappears. And I'm like breathing a sigh of relief. And she comes back in and she goes, did you? And I just like conjure a look on my face like, did I what? What could you possibly be talking about? So I never came clean. I just like to the end of the day, I just refused to admit what I had done. We finished washing the dishes and I stepped outside with my roommate who was like, you really didn't kill breakfast today. And I was like, you want to know what you ate? So that's my confession, and I would say we were asked to think about, lessons learned from this experience. The first lesson is that in retelling this story therapeutically many times over the years, I have learned that you can probably eat paper mache. I think it's just made out of flour and water. There's no way I could possibly know because I didn't ask Emily. But I didn't poison anyone that day. The second thing I learned is that I do lie when I'm afraid, and I feel really bad about that, and I try not to do it anymore. But it did not feel like I was making the choices from within my body on that day. And the last thing I learned is I should never work in a kitchen, and I never have. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Noelle. Our second reader tonight is Tori Oliveira, a senior creative writing and English double major here at UMF. She is an aspiring artist and an author. And when she's not lost in her own thoughts, she's lost in the woods in search of berries. Please welcome Tori.
All right, hello. For those of you who don't know, I spent the last semester in Thailand for 3 months. Super great time, you can ask me about it later. And I generally am a pretty shy and reserved person, so one thing in Thailand I was not prepared for was the barter culture. I'm the kind of person, if I see a price tag, if it's a reasonable price, I'll be like, yes, perfect. If it's not, I'll be like, ooh, and turn around. I once bought a scarf at a market for the equivalent of $4 US, and I'm like, this is such a good scarf, only to meet up with my friends like 10 minutes later and learned another one of my friends had gotten it for the equivalent of $1 because he knows how to barter. So fast forward about 3 months. I'm at the end of my time there, coming off of a flu, and it's like 4 a.m., and I hop on the back of some man's motorcycle to drive to the airport, because I'm going to do a 3-day motorcycle tour in Vietnam. Also not what the story is about, so you can ask me about it later. After the whole tour, I booked it. The whole thing was prepaid for, which was great. All the food, all the lodging, perfect. So I ended up padding out my time a little bit for my flight back to Thailand. I had from the time I woke up at the hostel they dumped us at, all the way until 8 p.m. And I wanted to get there early, and the bus took like an hour and a half to get there. So I had until when I woke up about like 8 a.m. to about 4 p.m. when I needed to catch the bus. One thing that was so nice about having that whole first part of the trip prepaid is because I could not use my credit card or my debit card outside of Thailand. So all I had for money was the 2,000 baht that I exchanged at the airport for however many dong, Vietnamese dong, that is what they call their currency. And that was all I had in my pocket. 2,000 baht is roughly the equivalent of 60 USD, and the US dollar goes pretty far in Southeast Asia. But I underestimated how much money I'd be spending. So, the stage is set. So I wake up at the hostel, I sit on the couch, because I made some plans to meet up with some of the people I had met on the tour for breakfast. They have this bowl of these itty-bitty tiny little bananas, so I have a banana. Great first start. So I meet up with these people, this sweet older Mexican woman with the same name as my little sister, and this adorable couple from New Zealand. So we go to breakfast, and it's at a nicer place, and I know I don't have that much money left. So I find the cheapest thing on the menu, which is a croissant, and Vietnam is known for their coffee. And I finally kicked my distaste for coffee while I was there. So I got a coconut coffee, and it was delicious, no regrets. But that all together totaled about 70,000 dong. And thank gosh for George, the sweet New Zealand man who went up to the register and paid for everybody's food without telling us. Because afterwards, I counted my money and realized I only had 105,000 dong on me, and I needed 40,000 to get for the bus ticket from central Hanoi to the airport. So I budgeted about 65,000 dong for food for the rest of the day. Just not a lot of money for food. So I'm off on my solo adventure because I didn't have any friends that came with me. This was a solo trip, and everyone I had been on the tour with had gone off on their own directions. So I did splurge on cell service, so I had data to use, thank gosh. So on the map, I found this lovely little park, and I'm like, all right, time to start walking. So I'm ducking through the streets of Hanoi, like on every street corner, I'm like bolting across the street this way and that because there are cars everywhere and there are people shouting, and I'm like, I just want to go to the park. So I finally get there, and I do like 2 or 3 laps of the park, and it is frickin' gorgeous. My favorite thing about it was the lawn wasn't grass, it was violet wood sorrel. And wood sorrel is one of my all-time favorite plants, enough so that as soon as I got back, I actually got a tattoo of it on my leg. And all the lantana was growing wild there, and it was in full bloom. And walking around the pond in the park, you see like these little old men fishing, and they're adorable, and it's just a great time. But then I start to get hungry. So far, I have had a banana, a croissant, and an iced coffee, and I've probably already walked several miles. So I come upon one of those big ground freezers full of ice cream, and I'm like, oh, I have to. So I see this stupid-looking fish-shaped ice cream sandwich, and I need it. So I fork over the 20,000 dong for the ice cream sandwich, and I go into the corner, and I'm already a little loopy by this point. I'm trying to conserve my water. I haven't had much to eat, so I'm quite literally like squatting by a bench, not on the bench, eating my ice cream sandwich, licking the wrapper, and people are taking the wide berth to go around me. So by then, it's maybe noonish, and I'm like, all right, it'll take me a while to get back to the area where I need to catch the bus. I'll start walking. So I venture on over there, once again, ducking through the streets this way and that, eyeing restaurants as I pass, like, oh, I can't afford that. And then I get to this other pond. I had spent some time there before the tour started, and it was a smaller pond, so maybe like 9 or 10 laps of this one. Every so often interrupted by like a group of little children that will run up to me and ask, hey, do you speak English? Can we practice English? And then they're reading off like a list of questions, eagerly expecting the answers. They're like, what's your favorite food? And I say French fries. And their next question is like, where can you find that food? And I'm like, literally anywhere. I saw some at a restaurant like 2 blocks away. You've had French fries, kid. But they were super cute. But after a while, they stopped coming up to me because I'm kind of walking like this. Eyes sunken. I've been on the road for 3 days. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm loopy as all heck. I'm like shaking. I'm like, I need food. So I pass a fruit stand. And it's just mounds of fresh cut tropical fruit. And I'm like, oh, yes, I need this. So I walk up to the woman and I'm like, how much? And there's no shade on this woman. If you can take advantage by price gouging tourists, do it. All the power to you. They can probably afford it. I, in that moment, could not. I had been in this region for 3 months. I knew vaguely what price fruit should be. And when she said 70,000 dong, I said, ha! And walked away. So I take a couple steps, and she's like, no, 50,000. And I wheel on her, and I say 30,000. She's like, no, not enough. And I'm like, okay. And I'm resigned to starve, so I start walking away again, and she's like, fine, beckons me back, 30,000. And she puts out her hands, and I fork over 30,000 dong. She doesn't even ask me what fruit she wants. She just, practically throws an entire cut pineapple at me. So I take this pineapple, I sit by the lake, and I eat the entire thing, juice running down my face. I'm using the last of my water to try and wipe it off. I've never had pineapple that tasted so good. It felt like I had licked a razor. So then I wander for a little bit longer, finally manage to get on the bus, get to the airport, get on the Thai airline that lets me that lets me spend 60 baht for a cup of ramen that I can eat on the flight back to Bangkok. And I can sit there and think, yes, I finally was able to barter. Thank you.
Lewis Robinson is the author of the novels The Islanders and Water Dogs, as well as the short story collection Officer Friendly. He likes road trips, amphibians, public libraries, sardines, sandwiches, and reminiscing about the pre-internet brain.
Okay, so after high school, I didn't go right to college. My friend Sven and I decided to go seeking adventure out west, seeking adventure and a paycheck. And Sven had grown up in Seattle, so we saved up that summer after high school and flew out to Seattle, where Sven said we could get jobs in Alaska. And he was right. It didn't take long. We were in Seattle for a little while. We got hired by a company called Icicle Seafoods, and they flew us to Anchorage, and then they flew us from Anchorage out to Dutch Harbor, which is in the Aleutian Islands. And when we got to Dutch Harbor, we boarded a floating processing barge, and that barge traveled even further into a more remote part of the Bering Sea, where we anchored and then received king crab that we processed. And we worked there for a month. And when we were done with the king crab season, we flew back to Seattle. And we had a little bit of money in our pockets, so we wanted to seek more adventure. So we hitchhiked from Seattle down to Mexico. And then when we were running out of money, we headed back up to San Francisco. When we got to San Francisco, we had a friend named Nate who was at UCal Berkeley. We knew he was there, but when we got to Berkeley, we didn't know how to find him. This was before the internet, this was before cell phones, and we gave up our search at the end of the evening and ended up sleeping in the bushes outside the Greek Theater in Berkeley. And this is what we often did on our trip. We had sleeping bags in our backpacks so we could kind of sleep anywhere. So we slept in those bushes. And when we woke up in the morning, we were actually woken up by a landscaper who was watering there, and he was kind of startled by us there in the bushes, and he said, this is really not safe. You know, there are snakes in there, and also you are in a city. Like, you should probably seek shelter. So we then traveled into San Francisco, where we looked for a place to sleep, and started looking for jobs. So we found a room in the West Hotel, which is a welfare hotel in the Tenderloin neighborhood of San Francisco, and it was really grimy, but it was really cheap. It had like this really kind of matted carpeting, and there were shared bathrooms, and there was often like a needle left in the bathrooms. It was pretty like grody. But after the first night in the West Hotel, we set out into the city. We kind of divided and conquered, went looking for jobs individually. And I was looking at like delis and restaurants and had some good leads by the end of the day. Was coming back towards the hotel, passing through Union Station, when I saw these three happy, smiley young folks about my age who were standing behind a table with a banner that said "Students for World Peace." And they beckoned me over, and I went over to say hello. They looked very friendly. And they said, "Are you a student?" And I said, "Yes, kind of. I mean, I'm not right now, but I probably will be again at some point." And they said, "Great." and what do you think of world peace? And I said, I'm pro world peace. And they were like, great. Well, we are having a dinner, a free dinner, at a townhouse just around the corner, and we would love for you to come and talk more with us about being a student and world peace. And I was like, awesome, free, I like it. So I went back to the West Hotel in search of Sven, and Sven was not there, but there was a note from Sven that said, hey man, I'm going to a brownstone for a free dinner. You should meet me there. So I was like, okay, this is good. He must have met my friends or maybe some other folks in another part of the city who have invited him to this dinner. So I went to the brownstone, and it was kind of as advertised. There were like more friendly people there. There was a ton of food, and the folks who had invited me were there, and they kind of like circled up around me and found me a place to sit, and I heaped a bunch of food onto my plate, and there was a slideshow where they were showing these just really delightful images of people playing volleyball on a like verdant green hill, and more food, and they said, this is our retreat center, and I was like, that looks incredible, and I was like, what does it cost to go there? They said, it's free, and I said, that sounds fantastic. And so what's the deal? And they said, well, we actually, there's a van parked behind the brownstone, and we're leaving in about 10 minutes. So, if you want to go, you can totally go. And I was like, that sounds amazing. I just need to find Sven. So I looked around for Sven, and sure enough, Sven was there. And I went over to him and said, man, this is awesome. Like, this is like more adventure. We can go to Napa Valley and go to the retreat center. And he's like, what are you talking about? These people are insane. And I was like, really? Like, they seem super friendly and great. I think we should go. And he's like, I am not going. And if you go, that will really suck, because not only will I be worried about you, but I will be left alone in the West Hotel, and that will be scary. So please don't go. And I said, I'm sorry, but this is like a great invitation, and I just think it's going to be really fun, so I'm going to go. And he was like, oh, God, I can't believe you, but okay. I said, I'll just go and check it out. I'll go and spend a night or two. And so he dutifully followed me out to the van and watched me get into the van, and he watched that sliding door close, and he watched me drive away. It took, 3 hours to get up there. We arrived in the middle of the night. They brought me and the other folks who were in the van into this, the retreat center was like an old Girl Scout camp. And so they brought me into like the room where everyone was sleeping, and there were just a bunch of sleeping people in there. And they gave me a top bunk, and they said, on the bottom bunk is Mark. And Mark will be, your buddy for the time that you're here. And so I said hello to Mark, and it turned out that this buddy that I would have was with me at all times. So he would, like when I went in to brush my teeth, Mark came in with me. And when I was walking on the trails, Mark was with me. And the next day when we went down to the little cabins for class time, he was with me as well. So I didn't really know what this was about, but we sat down in a group. And the first topic was the difference between good and evil. So I was like, okay, let's hear it. And the more that they talked about good and evil, the more I was like, okay, what does this really mean to you? So I started asking questions. I was like, I don't really know what you mean by evil. And they said, well, your reluctance to kind of listen to the lesson is actually kind of it's kind of evidence of evil. So that's just one example. And I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't ask questions, but that seems kind of weird. And then the next big topic was let's look at the years leading up to the birth of Jesus Christ. And then let's see how they are quite similar to the years leading up to our leader. And I was like, who's our leader? I hadn't heard about, a leader. So I was like, I asked another question. I was like, who is this leader? And they were like, well, he's not here with us, but he is our supreme leader. And he's very important to, to what we do here. And I was like, okay, so like kind of a cold sweat is coming down. I mean, I asked more questions, and I said, I actually don't really see the parallels between those years before Christ was born and those years before your leader was born. And they said, so here again is evidence of evil. And in fact, I can feel the presence of the devil in this room right now. And I was like, oh no, okay. So after class adjourned, I asked, when is the van going back to San Francisco? And they said, well, the van isn't here. We'll let you know. It'll be a few days. As the week went on, it was kind of more of the same, and they were really kind of like getting sick of me because I was asking questions, and and it got to the point where it was kind of tense, and they were just telling me, yes, the van isn't leaving, but and we were. The two folks that had recruited me in San Francisco, we were outside of the main building, and we were having this kind of tense exchange, and they said, what we haven't told you is that we've been receiving messages for you, and all of them contain the same information, which is that your sister has been in a car accident. And I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. I was immediately terrified to hear this news, and they said, don't worry, your friends and family are lying to you. This is not actually what's happened. And I was like, the wheels are turning. I'm like, okay. And then they said, now, your family is willing to lie to you, and we would never do that. That is more evidence of evil and the devil, and we are showing you a new path. And I swear to you that the timing of my friend's arrival was right in that instant when we were having that conversation. Paul and Ellie came kind of through the main gate and up to the building. They spotted me. They slammed on the brakes. They said, get in the car. I got in the car, and as we were driving away, and there was no conversation. It was just like, I was embarrassed, and I was scared, and they said immediately to me, your sister is okay, and I said, I know, and they also said that Nate had been the one to tell them, and that Sven had been the one to tell Nate, and so I knew in that moment, and this is really what I've learned from this experience, is that you should always prioritize your friends above an adventuresome pursuit of world peace. Thank you.
Karen Barrett is a native of Maine and UMF alum. She began her career as a nurse's aide in the late 70s and early 80s. At UMF, she discovered her love of learning and passion for rehabilitation. She completed her graduate work at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and in 1997, after completing her doctorate, she returned to Farmington to teach at her beloved alma mater.
Don't you look at me so smug and say I'm going back.
That is the first song that Bob Marley ever recorded. called Judge Not. I don't know how many of you know it. So I'm going to talk about 3 separate situations that are all related, and it will all come together at the end, I promise. So when I was in high school, I didn't really fit in very well. I wasn't one of the cheerleaders. I couldn't dribble a ball to save my soul. In fact, when the PE teacher said, okay, we're going to do layups, I'm like, what's a layup? So I didn't fit in very well. So in high school, I disengaged, right? So when it came time to look at colleges and do college tours, we would, certain students would get taken to, different college fairs and such. And so I said, I'm interested. Well, my guidance counselor, in his infinite wisdom, said, I'm not sure you're college material. Okay. So I didn't go. So he's dead, and I'm a college professor. So because I didn't go to college right away, I worked as a nurse's aide for many years, and one of the women I took care of, I learned so much from women who were born in 1899, 1901. These were just amazing women, one of whom registered women to vote the first year in Industry, Maine. So just amazing people. Loved the job. So one day, there was somebody who was really sick, and I went to my boss, my charge nurse, and I said, this woman's really sick. And she said, no, she isn't. She's faking, blah, blah, blah. So when the third shift nurse came on, charge nurse came on, I said to her, so-and-so's really sick, but my charge nurse doesn't believe me. Will you check on her? Because I was just a lowly peon, right? Just a nurse's aide. So during report between my boss, the second shift charge nurse, and the third shift charge nurse, during report, they said, well, Karen's really concerned about so-and-so. And the other nurse kind of rolled her eyes, and she said, well, Karen's pretty smart. And to which that other nurse, my boss, said, well, she can't be too smart if she's working as a nurse's aide. Right? Yeah. So, my story actually comes from a good friend of mine who's a real estate agent. And she said that she met a buyer. And so they arranged to meet up and go through, what his requirements were, what he might be interested in, geographically, what his budget was, et cetera, et cetera. So they agree to meet at a restaurant. The buyer comes in, she gives him a wave. He comes in, sits down, and they start, talking shop after a little small talk. And he cannot look away from her breasts. And she's like, okay, this is weird. So they start talking, and she's trying to distract him and whatever. And no matter what she does, his eyes go right back to her breasts, right? And she starts thinking, can you believe this? Can you believe this guy? Doesn't he know any better in terms of, knowing you, right? And this isn't a date, for God's sake, right? It's a business, it's a professional transaction, and he's looking at my breast, so she gets, and it starts to get really awkward. His speech is halting, and it gets really awkward, and she's like, you know what? Frig this. I'm gonna cut this short and bug out. So she does. And on the way home, she's driving in a car, and she is sputtering to herself. Can you believe, in this day and age, somebody doesn't know enough, not right, look me in the eye. So she's sputtering all the way home. She gets home, and she goes into her restroom, and she's walking by her mirror, and she looks, and she sees that the underwire in her bra has come out of the sleeve and is sticking out between her breasts about 4 inches. So she thinks to herself, what was that guy thinking? Was he thinking I was like a cyborg? Was he thinking I was like wired and recording that it was an antenna? Or maybe he thought it was like a medical device and he didn't want to mention it. So all that time that guy was sitting there, he was trying to figure out what the hell that thing was. So the moral of all those stories is sometimes when you judge people, you're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Our final storyteller for the night is Zach Holt. Zach is a second-year creative writing and English double major. He has a passion for all forms of writing and storytelling and hopes to, one day, reach a large audience doing just those things. He enjoys spending time with his friends and family, and put simply, he loves life. Here's Zach.
Difference is this one is true. The time has gone. I folded your clothes on the chair.
I remember being 9 years old and watching snowflakes bounce off the windshield of the car. Every time my dad and I drove in the snow, I always imagined that we were ancient warriors going to battle and that the snowflakes were like volleys of arrows or spears or something like that. And even though I thought we were going to battle, I always felt safe because of the windshield and because my dad was always there by my side. So we're driving along, coming back from my uncle's house, and we start to swerve to the side of the road. So I sit up and I look over to my dad to see if I can see if anything's wrong, and his face is totally white. So I say, "Dad, are you okay?" "Oh yeah, buddy, I'm fine, I'm just a little dizzy." So he pulls over to the shoulder of the road, and we stop for a moment while he recollects himself. After a while, his color comes back, he says he's fine, so we get back on the road and we head home. I didn't really think anything of it, but I guess it must have worried my dad because shortly thereafter we were at the doctor's trying to figure out what was going on. So after a bunch of tests, doctors coming in and out, we're waiting and waiting for results, and the doctor finally comes back and he says, "Sir, one of your major arteries is 95% blocked. You need to have surgery as soon as possible. You're at a great risk of stroke." So my dad talks with the doctor, they set up a time for surgery, and a week or two later, we're at the hospital in Freeport. And it was sort of like a weekend ordeal. He'd have the surgery on Friday, recover in the hospital Saturday, Sunday, and we'd be back Monday night. So that's exactly what happened. The surgery went well, recovery went well, and we made it home Monday night, went into the bedroom, unpacked our things, and my dad asked me for help. He said, "Hey, can you help me find the tube for my CPAP machine?" Because he had sleep apnea. I was like, "Yeah, sure, fine." So I go in the closet and I'm like sort of haphazardly looking around for this thing because I want to be doing other stuff. I'm 9 years old. I don't care about this stupid tube. So after a few minutes of searching, I come out of the closet with my head down and I say, "Dad, I can't find it. Can I just go watch TV?" He says, "Sure, bud, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I'll just find it tomorrow while you're at school." So he gets in bed to go to sleep, and I go out to the living room and I watch YouTube until maybe like 11 or 12 at night. I'm finally tired. So I shut everything down and I walk back to the bedroom, crawl in beside him and go to sleep. I wake up the next morning like usual. I get dressed, go out to the kitchen, make us coffee, and I go in to wake my dad up for school because he drives me to school. So I say, "Dad, it's time to get up." And he doesn't wake up. So I shake him a little bit and I say a little louder, "Dad, it's time to get ready for school." But he doesn't move. Being 9 years old, I hadn't really had much experience with death. So I was just really confused. I didn't understand what was going on. I thought he was like playing a game with me, so I like tried to wake him up for a while. And for years after that, nobody ever took the time to explain to me what had happened, why or how my dad had died. So I was just confused and sort of looking for a reason. So until I was like 14 years old, I went through life carrying with me the thought that because I didn't find my dad's CPAP tube, that was the reason that he had died. So I sort of wrestled with that for a lot of my youth. But as I got into high school, I started thinking a bit more critically, and I realized that that wasn't what I should be focusing on because, somebody told me. I finally understood, he died of complications of surgery. But I was still so angry about what had happened, that my dad had left me too soon. I was looking for a way to blame myself. So I was thinking, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And finally I realized my true failure was not saying something meaningful to him with my last words. I said to him, "Dad, can I just go watch TV?" instead of "I love you" or hugging him. So for some years after that, I lived with that regret. And in more recent years, I started thinking about it even more critically, and I come to realize that that's not correct either. I realize now that my true failure was not looking at the circumstances correctly. I think losing my dad has given me the ability to understand you should never take people for granted. I know it's pretty cliche, and it's always in the media like books and television and movies. There's always some line that's like, never leave things left unsaid. You never know what's going to happen. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. But I really think that there's no truer words to live by. I know how it feels to live without the person you love most and to regret the final things you've had to say to them. So I mean, if you care about somebody, just tell them. Tell your friends you love them, tell your family you love them. I mean, people really need to know that, and I think if you live life like that, telling the people you know and love that you do so, it'll just make everything a lot better for you. I mean, that's why every day I say I love you to my friends. So yeah, I just think that that's the motto you should go through life living by. Never take anything for granted. You don't know who's waking up tomorrow and who's not. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Zach. That concludes this event. I just want to give another thank you to our speakers and Louis and the other people that helped put this together. Aiden up in that weird little office with the lights. And, if you liked this event, if this was something that you found meaningful, maybe you want to be a speaker and maybe you know somebody else who you think, they have a good story. We have a little ballot box set up outside and to the left against the windows with some pens and little slips. So if anyone wants to write in a name, recommendation for speakers, please do that. Include your name and email on one side because we're going to pick 3 of those out. And you'll get a free BeaverMoth shirt. So again, thank you all so much. This was wonderful. I'm so grateful for this. I'm sure it was meaningful for everyone here. So okay.